In the post-9/11 world, the global landscape has been markedly shaped by heightened security concerns and the extensive implementation of anti-terrorism measures. Governments across the world have adopted a range of policies to combat terrorism, with strategies ranging from intelligence gathering and law enforcement to military interventions and financial sanctions. While these measures are undoubtedly necessary to protect national security and prevent terrorist activities, they come at a significant economic cost. The focus of this video will be on the long-term economic implications of anti-terrorist activities, emphasizing increased inefficiencies, transaction costs, and the diversion of resources from productive uses. In the long run, these costs can erode business competitiveness, lower productivity, and hinder economic growth potential. We will explore the multifaceted nature of these economic consequences, including how anti-terrorism measures impact businesses, the global trade environment, and broader economic systems. Additionally, we will examine the trade-offs between short-term security gains and long-term economic costs, providing a comprehensive assessment of the balance between safeguarding national security and maintaining economic vitality. The direct costs of anti-terrorism measures are relatively straightforward. Governments allocate significant portions of their budgets to counter-terrorism programs, including defense spending, intelligence operations, surveillance systems, and border security. According to estimates from organizations such as the World Bank and the RAND Corporation, these costs have escalated over the last 2 decades. However, beyond these immediate financial expenditures, the broader and more insidious economic costs arise from increased inefficiencies, friction in transactions, and the diversion of resources from productive activities. One of the key long-term effects of anti-terrorism measures is the introduction of inefficiencies into business operations. Businesses, particularly those involved in international trade, are increasingly subject to stricter security protocols, customs checks, and regulatory requirements. This has a direct impact on the cost of doing business, as companies must allocate more resources to comply with security regulations, manage supply chain disruptions, and mitigate risks associated with delays. For example, the introduction of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism and the European Union's Authorized Economic Operator Program have led to an increased emphasis on supply chain security. These programs require businesses to invest in enhanced security measures, including tracking systems, documentation, and compliance audits. While these efforts contribute to national security, they also result in higher operational costs. For firms engaged in global supply chains, these additional layers of security mean more time spent on compliance and more resources allocated to non-productive activities, thus lowering overall productivity. Moreover, inefficiencies are not limited to logistics and security measures, but extend to administrative burdens. Companies must invest in additional manpower and training to navigate the complex web of regulations, certification processes, and reporting requirements. These compliance costs may seem minimal on a case-by-case basis, but collectively they can weigh heavily on the ability of businesses to operate efficiently, especially for smaller firms with limited resources. Transaction costs refer to the costs associated with exchanging goods, services, or information, beyond the price of the goods themselves. In a world marked by heightened security measures, transaction costs are exacerbated by a range of new inefficiencies that arise as a result of anti-terrorist policies. These costs can be classified as both direct and indirect. Increased security protocols lead to higher direct transaction costs, especially in sectors like aviation, shipping, and international trade. Airlines and freight carriers must implement additional security measures, such as increased screening, data sharing, and physical inspections, which are expensive and time-consuming. Passengers face longer wait times at airports, while freight companies may experience delays as cargo is held up at customs or subjected to extra checks. These delays create a cascading effect throughout the entire supply chain, increasing costs for businesses involved in the production and distribution of goods. Moreover, financial transactions are also affected. The implementation of anti-terrorist financing laws has resulted in stricter regulations for financial institutions, which must now monitor, report, and block transactions linked to terrorist organizations. This increases the costs of financial services and reduces the efficiency with which businesses can transfer funds internationally. As a result, businesses face higher transaction fees, delays in cross-border payments, and a reduction in the overall liquidity of financial markets. Indirect transaction costs are often harder to quantify, but can have a significant impact on long-term economic activity. For instance, businesses may be less willing to engage in international trade due to the increased risk of delays, higher transaction costs, and the uncertainty surrounding the stability of international security environments. Trade barriers, such as tariffs and non-tariff barriers imposed under the guise of counterterrorism efforts, can discourage foreign direct investment, FDI, and create a more insular global economy. This, in turn, may result in reduced competition and a lower degree of specialization, which can stifle innovation and economic growth. The most significant long-term economic consequence of anti-terrorism measures is the diversion of resources from productive economic activities to security-related efforts. Governments around the world have significantly increased public spending on counterterrorism measures, often at the expense of other critical sectors such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and social welfare. This shift in public investment priorities can have serious implications for long-term economic growth. Similarly, businesses are also affected by the diversion of resources. Instead of investing in research, innovation, and the development of new technologies, many firms are forced to direct substantial resources toward compliance with regulatory requirements and counterterrorism measures. This misallocation of resources can undermine the competitiveness of industries, reduce productivity, and decrease the potential for technological advancement. The long-term impact is a stifled economy with slower growth prospects and lower levels of innovation. Increased inefficiencies and transaction costs due to anti-terrorism measures have a particularly noticeable impact on international trade and foreign investment flows. The heightened scrutiny of international transactions, along with the imposition of tariffs, sanctions, and trade barriers, can reduce the volume of trade between nations. When security-related risks are prioritized over economic considerations, businesses and governments may adopt more protectionist policies, leading to a fragmentation of global markets. Additionally, the fear of potential terrorist activity can discourage foreign direct investment. Multinational corporations are likely to be cautious about investing in regions perceived as high risk due to the threat of terrorism or the costs associated with complying with anti-terrorism regulations. This reduces the inflow of capital into developing economies, slowing their economic growth and hindering their ability to develop key industries. The net result is a less integrated global economy, with fewer opportunities for cross-border trade and investment. While the economic costs of anti-terrorism measures are substantial, the necessity of such measures in ensuring national security cannot be ignored. The balance between safeguarding public safety and promoting economic prosperity is a delicate one. In many cases, short-term economic losses due to anti-terrorism efforts may be outweighed by the long-term benefits of preventing large-scale attacks, economic disruptions, and the potential costs of rebuilding after such events. Nonetheless, the challenge lies in ensuring that the cost of security does not unduly burden the economy or undermine its long-term growth potential. Policymakers must weigh the benefits of enhanced security against the economic trade-offs involved, seeking to implement anti-terrorism measures in ways that minimize inefficiencies, reduce transaction costs, and avoid the excessive diversion of resources from productive economic activities. The long-term costs of anti-terrorism measures, encompassing inefficiencies, increased transaction costs, and the diversion of resources, pose significant challenges to businesses and national economies alike. While these measures are essential for protecting citizens and national interests, they must be carefully managed to avoid stifling economic growth. In the globalized, interconnected economy, the consequences of heightened security measures are far-reaching, impacting everything from international trade to domestic productivity. To mitigate these costs, governments and businesses must find a delicate balance between ensuring national security and preserving economic efficiency. By implementing smart, targeted anti-terrorism policies that focus on minimizing unnecessary friction in transactions, optimizing resource allocation, and fostering international cooperation, it may be possible to address both security concerns and the long-term economic health of nations. This balance is essential for ensuring that the fight against terrorism does not inadvertently undermine the economic foundations upon which future prosperity is built.